Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for giving me the time. I appreciate it. There's no question and no disagreement among members from both sides of the aisle that we need financial reform for consumers, for the health of our financial services industry, and for the economy. But this bill isn't the answer. In fairness, you can find some good bipartisan provisions in this bill. For example, Mr. Kanjorski and I worked out insurance language to bridge the gap in communication among regulators and address problems with multifaceted businesses like AIG. Mr. Hinojosa and I worked on language to bolster housing counseling efforts at HUD, and the bill contains much needed credit rating agency reform. Unfortunately, the good doesn't outweigh the bad. Today, credit is less available than ever. Small businesses are struggling to keep their doors open, and a record number of Americans are jobless. According to a report issued yesterday by the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the number of homeless and hungry families is still on the rise. We need a bill to unfreeze the credit markets so that financing is available to allow U.S. businesses to grow and create jobs. We need a bill to improve regulation. We need a bill to help Americans get back to work so that they can provide for their families and put food on the table. Instead, Mr. Frank's bill sets us back. It imposes a new tax on financial institutions, diverts financing away from lending and job creation, and creates a permanent federal bailout fund, TARP 2. Successful businesses and taxpayers will pay in advance for the failings of those that are reckless. And guess what? Taxpayers are on the hook once again if there isn't enough money. Does that sound familiar? Of course, because it's more of the same. This bill doubles down the government intrusion in the private sector. It increases fees and federal spending. Instead of strengthening consumer protections, it creates a giant new federal bureaucracy. 5 D.C. bureaucrats will tell groups across America, anyone involved in financial activities, including churches that provide payment plans for funerals, what products and services they can offer. Did churches cause the financial meltdown? No. Why not address the disconnect among dozens of existing federal agencies before layering on a new one? Are we creating another agency or another problem? And finally, we need straightforward over-the-counter derivatives reform. What we don't need is regulation that charges regulators with creating a one-size-fits-all approach to regulate compliance, enforce unjustified mandates, and kill jobs. We must crack down on illegal, unfair, and deceptive activity, eliminate regulatory gaps, and strengthen the effectiveness of enforcement agencies. We should create a culture of transparency and accountability on Wall Street that will discourage, not promote risky behavior, and never, ever, ever again leave taxpayers holding the bag when those deemed too big to fail cannot meet their obligations. That's what our Republican alternative aims to do. My Republican colleagues on the Financial Services Committee and I have offered at every step of the way solutions for smarter, stronger financial regulations, and yet the bill, Mr. Frank's bill steamrolls ahead, threatening to weaken the economic competitiveness of our markets, tie up capital, and tie the hands of businesses, limit consumer choice, and place taxpayers on the hook for Wall Street's mistakes. This bill is an overreach and an overreaction and should be thrown overboard. It will cause irreparable harm. We need bipartisan reform to get our financial system and our country back on track. Americans, consumers, taxpayers, job seekers, the homeless, the hungry, and Main Street businesses deserve real financial reform. This bill is not it. I urge my colleagues to oppose the bill and support the Republican alternative. I yield back.